Welcome back to another episode of Tanatastic Talks. Today, I thought that we would talk about overthinking. I know for a lot of us, overthinking is something that pretty much we all do, more or less. Maybe some more than others. Before I was hit with chronic illness, I was an overthinker. After my chronic illness, I am still an overthinker. However, I am having to kind of shift that and have that look differently for me and not get too ahead of myself, because in reality, I'm learning that it doesn't do me the greatest service to just overthink all the time about things that I cannot control. And so I just thought that I would just share some of what I'm learning and ways that overthinking is helpful, and ways in which really analyzing a topic can be beneficial, but it all depends on how you utilize it. Right. Anyways, if you're interested, then stick around. If you like what I have to say, then give me a like. And if you're yet to subscribe, then subscribe right down there. And I'd love for you to join the family here. All right, so let's get started. It's easy when we have a chronic illness and we have people asking how we're doing, when we're also confronted with new realities about ourselves. I think it can become very tricky not to overthink and overanalyze. For example, when my face was half paralyzed, I often thought, okay, is this going to ever return back to the way that it was? That, on the one hand, is completely normal to be thinking that way, because your mind does wonder. Any human being on the planet that would happen to would think, okay, yeah, when is my face going to come back to normal, right? Will I be confronted with damage? Will I not be confronted with damage? How long will it take to see some improvement? All those types of questions are all normal. I think when it goes to the opposite extreme, to being just normal and just healthy and a part of the human experience, basically, is when I think it starts to take over really not just your mind, but everything around you kind of gets tainted because of this lens that you're now wearing that's colored with all the fear that you have about what's happening to you. Again, that is also, I think, normal in our experience, but you have to process that really for yourself and come to a place of acceptance, really, even though it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. Coming from experience, okay? It's really not easy, but I think in order to start moving on in a healthy way in your life, you have to come to a place of acceptance instead of only looking at or being upset at or being crushed at the things that you can't do anymore and whatnot. Like, there's a time to grieve. Like I've talked about in other videos, grieving is normal and should be experienced. And overthinking in that way of like, oh shoot, the job that I was doing, I can't do it anymore. If you're just only focused on that, you're gonna get like mega depressed. I mean, I know I would. And some of you have experienced that, where it's been really tough to get past, having to give up a job that you loved, right? And if that has happened to you, leave a comment down below. How did you get through that? I'd love to hear from you, because I know we have all different ways of doing things for ourselves, because we all have different personalities, different ways of coping. And so if we can help each other out through this, I think that would be great. Overthinking, when it starts to kind of creep into like every single part of your life, as it relates to chronic illness, I think it's a fine line, really. Because when you start thinking of like, what is my life gonna look like in 5 years or in 10 years? That's where I was like 2 weeks ago. I was like starting to think about all these things that I can't think of because they don't exist yet. Okay, so like I mean, on the one hand, yeah, okay, it's totally normal to be thinking about like, oh yeah, like dream and, you know, and just to think about our lives and what they're going to look like. On the other hand, if you start crying like I did about like different things and start worrying about different things and not like kind of like reining yourself in a little bit and making sure that you're not kind of just going over the edge of like, okay, no, this is like too much. Like you got to just calm down, Tanya. If you don't do that, it's just, you're going to just be emotionally like burdened, really is the word that I can find right now. If you can find a way to move forward through that, I think that would help you and be more beneficial to you in figuring out what you can do now in your recovery, etc. 2 weeks ago, I was worrying about all sorts of stuff that I can't control right now. They don't exist right now. And my mom was just like, okay, Tanya, like, she was just like, listen, Tanya, like, you can't start thinking about all these things because they're not here. And you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's no guarantee for tomorrow. So, like, why are you, like, worrying about all this stuff that, like, you don't even know yet if they're going to even happen because they're so far off and you don't even know what your life is going to look like in 5 to 10 years. Like, again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have goals. Yes, have healthy goals. But if you start thinking in a way that is like just very negative about your future and like just you're beating yourself up inside your head about your future and like your likelihood of this and that, I just worry that that's not the best path to go on because you can just get lost in the wilderness, right? And it's just it gets lonely out there. Where in life you just become this like lone wolf and you just isolate yourself from society and those types of things are not healthy for anyone. I think it comes back to, again, overthinking. You have to counter that with like managing your expectations. Okay, example, just 2 days ago, I went to a big mall here in the city and I haven't been to it since way before I got sick over 2.5 years ago. I went there and it wasn't a busy day, but it was busy for me because I was like, oh my goodness, there's all these people. And I had my headphones for my hearing sensitivity and it was like sensory overload like crazy and I just felt like people were on top of me. And I feel like ever since this whole chronic illness journey started for me, that my personal bubble has actually gotten bigger. Before, I didn't have a huge issue with people like necessarily invading space unless it was like weird or anything like that. But now I find like if I'm in a mall or just in like, I'm window shopping, if you're too close to me, like I'm not going to freak out at you, but inside I'm going to be like, oh my goodness, like this person is like invading my space. Like I have to get away. I have to get away. That's what's going through my mind. I have to come to a place within myself where I'm like, okay, Tanya, they're not trying to attack you. Your brain's sending wrong messages. Okay. They're just looking at the same like sweater that you are and they think it's cool, right? Meaning that you probably have similar taste. Okay. That's fine. Like, I think trying to rationalize and kind of talk yourself off of that, just that ledge that you might be on in your mind, thinking like, oh my goodness, about like any given situation is a smart way to start. I know it takes a long time. I'm going to be 2 years into this in May and I'm still learning how to do all this type of stuff. So, okay, so ways in which I think it could be beneficial is like when you have questions for your medical team, for your physiotherapist, your ability to really ask questions can also help you when you're in therapy. Bringing out some themes that you've been thinking of or struggling with over the last week or few weeks, I think is helpful for your therapist to know. And obviously trust and stuff is like good to have with them. It's needed to have with them for you to feel comfortable and at ease with expressing yourself and expressing those fears and all those stuff. So I think in that context, I think that is beneficial, and they can also help you in understanding a little bit more of how you personally overthink and ways in which, and giving you strategies in which you can just counteract. So like looking at the evidence for and against. So if I think that my life is gonna like suck forever, well then what's the evidence for that? Like how do I know that that's gonna actually be the case? So I'd write down a list of like, this is why, and this is the information that I have that why my life is not going to suck. So you see the list and you get to compare, and that is very helpful. So I know that with chronic illness, it's like not only physical, but it's mental. And I feel like if we're able to learn how to deal with the physical symptoms that we're experiencing, as well as the kind of mental, psychological things that happen, questions that come up, those types of things, if we're able to learn how to manage them, and it takes time and effort, I know, and it's frustrating, but I think you can come out the other side with more strength, more confidence, more joy, and more peace for yourself, within yourself, and that same ability to spread those emotions of joy, peace, tranquility, acceptance, those types of things. So I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you would like for me to continue this, whether it's in the comments, I'll respond, or if you want me to make another video giving you more tools, I will gladly do that. So just let me know down below. Okay, see you next week.